for inviting us here. And as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded, which is probably what the pop-up is that you just got from Zoom. Just wanted to go over a quick agenda here. I know you're all excited about gap year options. Jason and I will do some quick intros, and then Jason will take you through the gap year, like a really quick 101 crash course. And this will be a super abbreviated version, but definitely invite you all to another expanded version of this presentation that Jason will do next week. So parents, if you have some students that weren't able to make it, or students, if you have some parents who weren't able to make it, definitely invite them. We'll make sure you get all the information for that in the resources section, which I will cover. It'll be my top 5 resources for your gap year research, including a $5,000 scholarship for any of you who are thinking of taking a gap time this year, which is really exciting. And then we'll open it up for Q&A at the very end. So I'm going to dive in here. Just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Lilia Pialtos. I'm the COO of Go Overseas, which is a community-centered resource for all different types of meaningful travel, including gap year, but also high school, internships, work abroad, volunteer abroad, et cetera. We're kind of like Yelp, but for educational travel. So you can read verified reviews on Go Overseas. I've been really fortunate to have traveled for the last 7 years across the country through running the USA Gap Year Fairs event series. And you can see this picture down here from the in-person events that we hosted. I myself am an artist slash educator. And at 17, I thought I was going to, beeline it for a very reliable career path like medicine or something. And then fell in love with ceramics of all things. If you had told me that I would get my master's in ceramics at 17, I would have thought you were crazy, but really fell in love with and found a passion of mine. And that has led me to really appreciate travel and learning of other cultures and traditional crafts in Asia and England, and really opened my eyes to different things. So I think that one of the most exciting things about gap year options is meeting all of the different people and hearing their very weird stories about the lives that they've carved out for themselves. So just wanted to give you a little background about me. And then also just wanted to highlight here that I really love being able to travel around the country and educate, inspire, and empower students to really carve out their own career paths. And this is a picture of our $5,000 scholarship winner last year, who's actually from California. So, I mean, I would love for our Californians to just bring in all of that free money to not go to college right away. I'm going to pass this over to Jason now. He's going to give you an intro and then gap year crash course.
Thank you so much, Aaliyah, and thanks everyone for being here this evening. I'm Jason Saroyan. I'm an accredited gap year consultant and the founder, or co-founder rather, of J2 Guides. I'm actually from just up the peninsula from you all. I was originally born in San Mateo. I went to school at Hillsdale High School before going on to college for undergraduate at UC San Diego. I came to the world of gap year through my own travels during college. I got very burnt out at UCSD and felt like I needed to take some time away, and ultimately ended up on an experiential conservation and wildlife biology course in East Africa. And it really opened my mind up to all the learning that I had done up to that point and helped me dive headlong into a field of working with other young adults to help them feel empowered in the learning that they were doing. So I've spent the last 25 years as a field leader, as a program director of a gap year organization, and now for the last 12 plus years, working with my wife, Jane, as an accredited gap year consultant. So we're going to dive right in because we have an abbreviated evening, but I just want to share a little bit of foundational information about this idea of a gap year so that you can do a deeper dive as you begin investigating this further. For us at J2 Guides, we look at a gap year or gap time as really just intentional time that an individual takes out of what is typical and everyday for them to get out into the world to learn and to grow. And so note in that definition and kind of its common denominators that we didn't say how long you have to go for, We have some gap year students who will take 3 months of gap time between high school and whatever is next. Perhaps that's college, perhaps it's something else. We have some students who have applied to college but have been offered a January admission, and so they have 6 months of gap time in front of them. And we have lots of students who have applied to college or not, but take the better part of 9 to 12 months of gap time. So whatever is right for you, gap year can be very compelling and quite meaningful as long as you've got a sizable chunk of space for yourself. We also didn't define really where you have to go. And while there are incredible destinations and programs that will bring you around the world, such as Tanzania, where I went, you don't have to leave the United States. You certainly don't have to leave California for your gap year to be a really powerful education journey for you. And that's one of the things that Aaliyah and I really like to do is kind of bust the myths about gap year. We've seen people have amazing gap year experiences right here in the US, and we've seen them have amazing opportunities all over the world, and combining the two. So whatever is right for you in that space is what's important. Finally, I would just say that gap year becomes an amazing opportunity for you to explore your career interests and ultimately perhaps discover what you might want to study or go on to look at occupationally in the rest of your life. Thanks, Leah, for the next slide. So when looking at whether or not a gap year is the right thing for you to choose, it's important to note a couple of things. Firstly, gap year is not a destination like college is, or community college, or the workforce, or a trade school, or the military. Gap year is the journey to get there. And ultimately, when you're taking gap time, you're going to be applying all that you've learned in the classroom and your life up to that point into real world experiences and gaining a lot of hands-on experience that you will then be able to bring back to whatever that destination is and be able to apply directly. And that helps really enrich the education cycle. So the question we want you to ask is really, what's your why for considering this? Just in the same way that we would hope your family and you are asking yourself, why am I looking at going to college? Or why would I be going to a trade school right now? We want you to ask this question of why you're thinking about a gap year. Up here on this slide are listed several of the most commonly cited reasons that students take gap time. And we know that you all are in the pressure cooker of the Bay Area and the Southern Peninsula especially, and that academic rigor is highly prized. And if you're feeling at all burnt out, you are in good company. Many gap year students cite that they are feeling quite burned out being on this academic treadmill that has been leading them towards college since a very young age. But there are a lot of other compelling reasons to take gap time, including you're just curious about yourself and you're curious about the world. You're interested in having more in-person experiences due to COVID because it's been so restricted recently. You're an athlete who's been concussed multiple times, or a student who's just feeling like their mental health needs a little bit more spaciousness and time to heal. Any and all of these reasons are great reasons to take a gap year. And when you're thinking about gap time, we really want you to center and start with what's your why, because that answer is going to help lead you to the goals that you ultimately set later. So if you're a fan of Ted Lasso, like I am, one of the hallmarks of the show is this idea of believe. And a hero of mine, a trail runner named Zoe Rom, recently posted this hall pass that she gave herself to actually chase big dreams. And I was really inspired by this because as adults, we don't often give ourselves permission slips to dream big. We have a lot of responsibilities. There's practicalities of life. It's sometimes hard to dwell in the space of dreams. But for you as young adults, it shouldn't be hard. We want you to dream. Just like Aaliyah talked about really following her dream and her inspiration in art, we want you to follow what makes you feel passionate. And so as you begin this process of planning and brainstorming a gap year, we want you to start with the audacious dreams. This is a great place for us to move to the next slide. If you begin with that permission slip and you move into a really unabashed brainstorm, one that just allows you to believe freely in yourself that anything is really possible. If you start from that place, you're going to really find that you might connect with several ideas that might really inspire you and could become the foundation of your gap year. And for all the parents and guardians out there, this is a great chance. This is a great opportunity for you to actually help write that hall pass. We know the practicalities of budget and the destinations you're comfortable with your child going, and all of the other things that we think about a lot as adults are going to come into play. But the very first steps of brainstorming for you as the potential gapper should really be sky's the limit. If you're interested in pursuing a language, amazing. If you're excited about going to climb that mountain, fantastic. If you want to learn a particular skill, incredible. It doesn't matter if you've never had experience with it. It doesn't matter if it's too bold of a journey to think about. It doesn't matter if you're scared. We want you to write it down, because ultimately your eyes are going to start gravitating over and over and over again to these ideas that really inspire you. And likely those are ideas that your parents or your guardians can get behind if you do choose to take a gap year. Next slide, please. Once you've established that, yes, I know I'm going to take a gap year, and yes, I have a few ideas of what I want to do, it's really important to start working with your family to help set some parameters. And one of the things that we found at J2 Guides is that almost anything can really serve you in your gap time. Almost any experience can have intrinsic value, but there are a few hallmark ingredients that if you include within your gap time and look at for each gap year experience, it's very likely going to turn out more successful than not. So one of those things is this idea of intention. So having a job can be a very intentional experience. You can gain work experience, you could be earning money, you could really gain a lot of opportunity to be exposed to the world and a potential career path. Intention is critical. You need to want to do it. You need to be invested in doing the experience. Beyond that, you need structure. Traveling around is wonderful, and there can be structure built into travel, but it's really amazing if you wake up every day with purpose, because if you have purpose, you're going to apply yourself, and undoubtedly you're going to find the spaciousness and freedom to explore and the independence that you so crave, at this age of, 18 to 20, which is wonderful. But having structure built in is a pretty critical ingredient. Additionally, what makes a gap year experience different than just having experiences out in the world is that mentorship is what allows you to go from your young adult life and really step into that first chapter of your adult life and really take on that independence that we often talk about with students. Mentorship is the difference between something being an okay experience that you realize the value of 10 years down the line to actually being something that you realize in real time you are growing, you are learning, you've had the opportunity to make mistakes, and you have someone who cares about you who wants you to learn from those mistakes and go on to do it better the next time. And then finally, we strongly encourage you to build in time with peers during your gap year. This is meant to stretch you, right? You're supposed to step out of your comfort zone at different points. That means there's going to be adversity. It means there's going to be moments you're not graceful. And in general, adversity loves company. If you're stepping out of your comfort zone in a significant way, being around other people who are doing the same thing is going to help bolster you. It's also going to give you a real sense of camaraderie and community in these activities, which the people at home won't necessarily understand because they're not there with you. But having peers who understand it is really amazing. So build these things in, set your parameters in these macro views, and then you can start diving into the micro, which is what we're going to look at next. Gap year can offer lots of opportunities, but as you start to dig into the options, you'll notice very quickly that there's a ton of subtlety, even between programs or experiences that look alike. Up here are some categories that you might start looking at, which will help you discern for yourself what the right opportunity might be, and ultimately what that opportunity might be at the right time during your gap time. So for example, really coming to a clear understanding of what's my budget, and do I have money to pay for an experience, or do I need to be cost neutral or something that I'm actually getting paid for? Is it possible for me to travel internationally? And do I want that? And will my family really support that? Or should I be in the US? And there's lots of reasons to do both. Or maybe you want to do both. How long is an experience that's going to be accessible to you? Some people go away and they'll be gone for 6 straight months. Others, like myself, really struggle to make it through 3. And other people want even shorter than that. Know yourself. It's really critical. It's having one of these experiences doesn't mean you're dictated to having that be the type of experience you're having for the full time of your gap year. It's very common that people get involved in 3 or 4 or 5 different experiences over the course of their gap time. So just because one experience is, say, a hard skill building, I'm learning how to do computer programming or I'm learning how to cook doesn't mean the next program can't be more soft skill oriented, where you're learning how to be really great in terms of teamwork and team building settings, or you're learning how to be a great communicator, or you're building up skills so that you can be a better decision maker. Those are all examples of soft skills. And then finally, really getting a sense of, are you comfortable in urban environments? Do you love rural settings? Where will you stretch yourself? What's a good challenge for you? And what opportunities are great for you in that group setting of peers, and what do you want to and what do you aspire to doing on your own? These are just some of the parameters that if you get clear on these can really help you mold your gap year into what will ultimately be the next slide, your gap year progression. Oh, or perhaps not. Oh, and we're there. Yep, to the one more slide. Perfect, thank you. When looking at your gap time, like learning any other impressive skill set, learning to be an adult out in the world takes a lot of practice. And what we want to encourage you to do is, just like learning any skill, I often think about swimming. We don't toss ourselves into the deep end of the pool if we haven't yet had a chance to practice this skill. We actually start in this new environment in the shallow end with lots of support. We have opportunities to be instructed in how to be safe and competent in those areas. And ultimately, we practice a lot. And once we've done those things, we can really strip away the scaffolding and move further and further into the deep end and a lot more independence and confidence in that new environment. Gap year is no different. We strongly encourage you, whether you start in the fall or the summer or the winter, that you begin an experience with a lot of structure. You build in a high amount of support. You build in lots of touchstones with adults that care about you and peers that are in the same boat. And as your gap year continues on, you can start building in more and more experiences of independence. You're going to be gaining skills again in real time that you will be able to apply to each subsequent activity. And this is a great way to be budget conscious, because while more structured experiences tend to cost more, less structured experiences tend to have a lower cost or no cost at all. And so you can really amortize the overall cost of a gap year by building towards more independence as the year goes on. This is a complex slide. We're going to go into it more at another time, and we're going to talk more about that event coming up soon. So as we reviewed, there are lots of compelling reasons to take a gap year, but ultimately the most important reason is because you actually can. You are at the cusp of a chapter closing in your life. This is the education that got you through high school. And the next chapter doesn't have to open in a designated timeline. Almost every college in this country is a fan of gap years and is open to offering you the chance to defer from college for a year. And we strongly encourage that this journey could actually really compound the educational effects and your ability to be successful going on to whatever's next for you. So enjoy this opportunity, consider it if you can. And if you have any questions, I know Leah is going to put my information up here in just a moment. Please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to speak with you and talk with you more, or speak with your family if they're interested in learning more about taking a gap year. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Really appreciate that, and appreciate the questions in the chat that are coming in. Michelle, Harish, really appreciate MK. They're all coming in now, which is awesome. So I'm going to try to be really quick with these resources so that we can dive into some questions. Both myself and Jason would be happy to popcorn some answers there. And Jason, feel free to actually, if you want to drop your information in the chat now too, if anyone's really keen to connect with Jason, he's awesome. So feel free to pick his brain afterwards. So in terms of gap year resources, there are tons of gap year resources. And I think that one of the exciting but also overwhelming things is that, as Jason mentioned, there's literally a gap year option for every single person. There's every gap year experience is unique. And so while that is both amazing, it's also intimidating. And so really, I think what's exciting to know and learn through events like these is that there's a whole world of people out there, a community that is happy to help guide you. So I'm just going to run through my top 5 tips. And just wanted to mention that all of these are not stock photos. These are actually photos of students on their gap years and gap year alumni that we've been able to meet or get to know through educators in the field and the USA Gap Year Fairs events. So really great to see the diversity of options here in terms of literal hands-on learning and exploration. So my first tip for you is to visit the USA Gap Year Fair's homepage. This is a hub page with a ton of information. You can read FAQs, tons of articles about the college deferral process, when to apply, how to convince your parents you want to take a gap year. Lots of very specific information and articles on USA Gap Year Fairs and Go Overseas. There are also tons of program options that you can read about. You can get to know a little bit more about Jason and his wife Jane, as well as the other counselors that speak at the events. And you can download our 2022 digital gap year guide, which includes COVID vaccination information, some fun facts about the 40 different organizations that offer programs this year. So really quick, and once I'm done, I will I'll start putting these in here for you into the chat. So number one, resource there. Number two is to seek firsthand advice. And Jason kind of mentioned this as well. Talk to people. You probably know a friend of yours, parents, you might know another parent who had a student that took a gap year. Ask them about their experience, connect them with your student. Talk to people like Jason, gap year counselors, your own high school, college counselors or post-grad counselors, wealth of knowledge for you to tap into. So speaking to people is definitely a good thing, in addition to the plethora of online resources that we've got. Number three is register for the last virtual gap year fair. And that one is next Wednesday. It's also a great place to meet people as well. And I'm just going to throw these in here too. I just dropped the registration link in there. So Jason really cruised through his presentation because I know we've got a hard stop tonight. But if you'd like to join us for that virtual gap year fair, Jason will do a slightly expanded version for 45 minutes. And then for about an hour and a half, you'll actually get to hear from about 30 or 40 different gap year program providers. We'll do every 10 minutes, there's a different info session about a different experience that you could have as a student. So this is a great way to just understand what that wide variety of program options are for you. The fourth one, which I'm gonna drop in the chat here, is to take the Gap Matcher quiz. So if you're feeling totally overwhelmed and you want a couple of personalized suggestions, you can answer the who, what, when, where, why of exactly what you're looking for, and we'll give you a couple of program suggestions for you. It's a great way you can take this quiz over and over again. It'll email you your results if you'd like to, use that as kind of your way to research different programs, and takes like 2 minutes to do. So quick and easy. And then the last and most exciting resource that we've got for you is this $5,000 gap year scholarship that we're offering this year through the USA Gap Year Fairs. So this is $5,000 for a 17 to 20-year-old that is a US resident. All of the eligibility requirements I'm showing you right now. But even if you are interested in a summer experience, if you know that you want to go to college, but you want to do some sort of a shorter term summer opportunity, you can apply for this scholarship. And with the scholarship, you also get in-kind mentorship from an accredited gap year counselor. So you could work with Jason one-on-one, choose to work with Jason or any of the other expert counselors to make sure that you are really fully supported in your gap year experience. So this is an incredible opportunity. The deadline is April 15th. It takes like 2 minutes to start your application. And then we will send you reminder emails to get that essay in and to finish your creative prompt before that April 15th deadline. So if anyone is eager, just start your application tonight, because it's very simple to fill out those step one. That is my last resource for you. And we've got 5 minutes for questions, which is great. I'm also just going to put up our contact information. So if you do want to get in touch with us, feel free to reach out. But maybe we can cycle back through, and Jason, happy to invite you back into the conversation. I know we had some great questions, so I'm just going to start in the very beginning here. That works for everyone. Cruise through these in 4 minutes. Michelle asked, when do you recommend students apply for college? During senior year or during a gap year?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think we're of two minds. Optimally, a student who has the capacity and the brain space and the energy should apply during senior year for a few reasons. One, it's great practice, and all of the resources around you are supporting you to do that. You've got the support of your guidance counselors, you've got all your teachers, it's easy to get letters of recommendation. A lot of the senior year energy is going towards that. And if a student isn't accepted at the school or schools of her choice, then this becomes an interesting scenario. So using gap time to reapply is actually quite a common practice. If a student doesn't get into the schools that they're excited about, then they can just reapply during their gap year by kind of putting all their ducks in the row during the summer, having visited schools in the springtime, going on a fall gap year experience, returning around Thanksgiving or early December, putting all the dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, and then submitting applications. If a senior is really not feeling ready to apply senior year, it's okay. There are lots of students who apply for the first time during their gap year. And I think one of the benefits of doing that is that it can really show your academic trajectory in a positive way during your senior year, because at the very least, your senior spring grades, which would never have been seen by colleges during the initial application cycle, will be seen. And you can show that and demonstrate that in the fall you did well, and in the spring you also did well, and in the summer you did something really compelling, and in your gap year you did something awesome in the fall. And so, as we said earlier, many colleges are really big fans of students taking gap time because they come on campus highly mature, really focused and excited to be there. One note is that in general, it is frowned upon to accept more than one acceptance from a college and request more than one deferral. So if you're going to request a deferral or a deferment for the following year, usually you only do that with one school. Otherwise, you can potentially jeopardize your candidacy at all your schools. So if you choose to do that, know that you're basically going to put down a deposit. You can always forfeit that deposit and reapply to schools as long as you're upfront and earnest about it.
And Jason, thanks for dropping that link in the chat. Jason's got a great resource on the J2 Guides website for writing a deferral letter. So I'm gonna repost that in the chat in case anyone missed it.
Great.
We've got 2 other questions in 2 minutes, so I want to see if we can catch these 2. How did you guide, and are these organized programs?
Right. Accredited gap year consultants, our role is to help students establish whether or not they are wanting to take gap year and whether or not that's the appropriate opportunity at this time in their life. And then beyond that, help students establish their goals and then connect with reputable programs, internships, volunteer experiences, work exchange opportunities, and then support students through the year, through the big transition periods, as well as supporting parents and guardians through this monumental journey. So that's the process of guiding. In my early years, I used to actually literally guide those programs in the field and worked with different organizations and then directed one of those programs. But that's the role of gap year consultants, and that's what my wife Jane and I do at this time. There are many organized programs, many of which are on the Go Overseas website, as Aaliyah was pointing out. And then there are other resources, for example, like the Gap Year Association website, which has a number of accredited programs and programs in the process of getting accreditation that are listed there.
And I just wanted to, I know we're at time now, but there are quite a few students that take an independent gap year, and a gap year counselor is a great guide for them if they want to do work exchange and independent travel. So you don't have to access a structured program, but it does give you a bit of peace of mind in terms of more support. But just wanted to mention that as well. There's a really quick question, and I think we're going to get cut up. Tanisha might cut us off, but MK asked, is there a public venue for posting who's doing a gap year and what they're doing, or what group opportunities are available? I would say that the Gap Year Association has an alumni group. And so if you are interested You can either go to the Gap Year Association website, which I will put in the chat right here, or you can email either Jason or myself, and we're happy to kind of connect you. Also, the USA Gap Year is a great, event and series that you can hop into again next week. And you can ask program representatives to connect with recent alumni. Oh, I mean thank you for the follow-up. Mountain View High School, is there a place where students post? Great question. We'll follow up with the counseling team. I'm not quite sure, or I don't know if Tamisha Wise knows, who's also on the call right now, but we will follow up and make sure that you get a list of the resources via email, and MK will get an answer from the counseling team for you. Awesome. Yeah. I do know that quite a few students have taken gap years just from going to Mountain View and Los Altos High School. We love seeing alumni come back to the USA Gap Year Careers events. So we know they exist. We just don't know if it'd be great if there's some sort of a student group or alumni association. So
I think it's in the works. It's just has yet to be fully developed.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you all for your questions. Really appreciate it. And again, come see Jason next week, next Wednesday. Would love to see a lot of you there. Best of luck with your gap year planning.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.